You are live.
Thank you, Amanda. I'll call to order the meeting for our ARPA committee. Could you please do a roll call for attendance?
Sure. Ms. Bramer? Here. Mr. Dickinson? Ms. Seaver? Here. Mr. Agnew? Ms. Gillis? Here. Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Mr. Beatty?
Here.
Mr. Lamont? Mr. Wild?
Here.
Mr. Gaddy?
Here.
And Mr. Leggett?
We have a quorum?
You do.
Thank you. Okay. So the first thing is approval of the minutes of our last meeting, and those did go out by email. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
Sure.
Thank you, Supervisor Beatty. Second by Mr. Gaddy.
Sure.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, that carries. Thank you. First up, we have privilege of the floor and public comment. I know there are some people here on specific applications, so I'll call you up at that time. Is there anyone here for public comment, general comments not related to a specific application? Okay, seeing nobody jumping up, let's go right on. And we do have a couple of people here for specific applications that we had put kind of on hold. And one of them is from the Warren County EDC. There's actually two. And I know that Mr. Siplon is here prepared to speak on these applications. If you want to come up, Jim, that would be great.
Thank you, Supervisor, and good afternoon, everybody. I wanted to remind everybody about the two applications that we still have pending. The one is for broadband and one is for housing. There's a couple of points that I wanted to clarify, and then certainly available to answer any questions. There's been a lot discussed on broadband. In fact, this morning I had a pretty active board meeting with the EDC board, and we talked about this a lot. But in the last 2 years, the Warren County access has grown from somewhere in the neighborhood of 75% of total available addresses with broadband to more than 90%. And the focus of the EDC when we were asked to engage on behalf of the county was to assist in driving closure on monies that had already been allocated or invested on behalf of the county. So we went about the process of going and executing our own assessment, so we would have the data that would allow us to drive that effectively, and that's largely what has gone on to this point. Out of that came something called the North Country Broadband Alliance, which the EDC has led and has a weekly call now for nearly 18 months. That is a large regional effort that acts as a clearinghouse for broadband efforts, not only in Warren County, but across much of northern New York. It's an effective regional advocate, and also was the basis of our grant that we did in cooperation with, among others, the Lake George, Lake Champlain Planning Board, recently using applying to one of the NTIA grant funds. I have it available if you'd like, but this sheet that I'm holding up represents the still available funding opportunities for broadband from primarily the federal government, although there are some other entities here as well. The object of this particular grant was to be able to position Warren County to continue to be able to compete effectively for the remaining funds that are available. It's going to be difficult to do now that we've gotten ourselves to more than 90% access. But there do need to be competitive options developed. We do need to close the gap on adoption versus access. So just because someone has the available broadband doesn't necessarily mean that they're yet utilizing it. And we need to collaborate with our neighbors. We need to continue the advocacy. The application that we laid in front of you was designed to do several things. One was to be able to provide funding for outside resources if the county or other resources were blocked from being able to maintain currency on our map updates. I'm not sure whether that will be needed or not. There's an effort underway, for instance, with the planning board that may address some of this. But as soon as the maps get updated, if they're in the hands of the county, they're subject to the disclosure agreements and the what's known as plan of record from many of the carriers. So we do believe it is worth having an independent set of current data on behalf of Warren County that can be used to advocate for additional grants and also for the challenge process for both the FCC and the state's utility mapping efforts. Whenever those maps are wrong that are being used by the FCC or by the state, they oftentimes block out areas that need broadband and are shown as having broadband but don't actually have it. One last thing I'd like to point out is the ARPA process was originally started in its very first incarnation. It was called the Infrastructure and Broadband Recovery Act. It's always been envisioned that ARPA funds be utilized for this use. And in fact, in every iteration since, broadband has been named as one of the approved uses of ARPA funds. Brookings Institute tracks ARPA funds that have been allocated to date. I think they do that by just accessing publicly available websites. And I looked yesterday at their county tracking. There's 236 counties they're currently tracking across the country, and more than $15 billion of ARPA funds that have been publicly disclosed in terms of how the money is allocated. It's a lot of interesting data, some of which may be helpful to you, but in particular, of the 236 counties and 15 billion so far, roughly 50% of that has been used for government operations and infrastructure. And within that infrastructure, roughly 16% of the money that's been allocated has been for broadband. That's more than $280 million to date, or roughly 16% of that particular section of monies. The only application that was submitted to the ARPA process for broadband, and I think we still are in that situation, was by the EDC for $50,000. It's 0.4 of 1% of the total that you have available to you. It's the smallest request of any category that you're currently looking to invest in. It's important to also understand that for every 1% of new broadband, the studies that we've recently reviewed, most recently from New Hampshire and Virginia, show that every 1% generates roughly $4 million worth of lifetime GDP for the municipality that creates it. So this investment and the ability for us to move from 92% to an even higher number represents not only a good investment for those residents or businesses, but represents a sustainable funding opportunity for the county. So I would advocate that the full 100% of the $50,000 that we've asked for be allocated here. The idea of only spending half of that money and only achieving perhaps half of the result that we could doesn't seem to me to be in the interest of the county as well as its residents. In either case, we will continue to work to the extent that we have the resources to do it. We'll continue to hold the weekly calls that we have. We will continue to act as a leader. What this will do is provide us with resources that would allow us to maintain the maps and to bring in outside resources whenever they're needed to be able to apply for the remaining funding and to continue the advocacy efforts that will help us hopefully achieve as close to 100% access as we possibly can. On the housing front, we had a separate grant request for $50,000. There's significant efforts underway around housing, and I think sometimes it can get confusing. In fact, I walked over here with Ethan and we were talking about the county's longstanding and now in motion study, which is going to look at both capacity and demand for housing in Warren County. The EDC is one of the funders of that effort. The LDC is a funder of that effort. The state of New York is a funder of the effort, and the county itself is a funder of that effort. One of the things that will make that effort most effective will be to help the public, starting with the business community, moving to the public officials in places like planning boards and other official entities, and the community at large, about the data that suggests that there is a need for housing. When the housing study comes, it will say, this is what we believe a particular consultant believes is required. What we would like to do is assist in that effort by engaging the communities where they stand, planning board by planning board, town by town, community group by community group, to allow them to engage in data that we can bring to bear. Data that is similar to what you saw this summer when we brought the authors of the study, the demographic drought, to the area. Now, that didn't happen for free. Those people, those noted national economists and those data sets sometimes cost money. So what we're advocating for is to, over the next 2 years, while not only the study plays out here at the county, but the comprehensive planning efforts go on in many of the municipalities across the county, that the EDC have the resources that it believes would help the public better receive that information and be consumers of that information. We've done this in the past. We've held public forums on housing data and trends. We've brought national experts to bear. Most recently, the economist, Dr. Lawrence Yun, who was one of the real estate economists that we had speak roughly a year ago, and then Dr. Rachel Cederberg this past year. What we're looking for is the ability to be able to continue to do that kind of stuff for the next 2 years. We laid out in the application how that money would be spent. So some of that money is to buy data, some of that money is to acquire speakers, and some of that money is to actually hold those kind of forums at a much greater rate involving many more people than we have been able to so far. At this point, we've held 3 events in the last 18 months. I'd like us to hold maybe as many as 5 or 10 events throughout the community to be able to engage as many people in Warren County and in our in the areas that we all serve, to allow them to see the same information that many of you have already seen, and for them to be able to ask questions of not only us, but of noted outside speakers that can provide some objectivity and some context to this. Again, that same bookings data that I told you about tracks all of the ARPA expenditures to date, and of the 236 counties, roughly 8% of their money has been spent on housing. $1.2 billion. So thus far. Other than this application, I believe you only had one other application for housing, which was from Habitat, and I applaud you for supporting that and moving that one forward. And all we're asking for is a modest $50,000 to be able to continue the work of taking the information that's going to be produced over the next 12 to 18 months, and making it as readily understood by the public as it possibly can. So I advocate for full 100% funding of that as well. If there's a funding level at less than that, that will simply limit the ability that we have to be able to do what we're hoping to be able to do. That would limit the number of people that we'd be able to see, that would limit the number of events we'd be able to hold. So with that, I open myself to any questions and appreciate the time. Thank you.
Just 1 second in case there are questions. Yes.
I don't have any questions, Madam Chair, but I do have comments, and I'm wondering if we can talk about this specifically as a committee to decide where to go with this before we just move on to something else. And
I do plan on having discussion on this as a pending application. Are there any questions from Mr. Siplon before he sits down? Okay, I'll open it up to discussion on these applications.
on these applications. So, Madam Chair, if you don't
You
mind,
guys are wild.
thank you very much. Everyone here probably knows that I chair the Economic Growth and Development Committee, which Mr. Sipan comes in nearly every month, comes and presents what's happening in his organization, what he's doing for the county. One of the things we always talk about is ROI, at least I do. What type of return do we get on our investment? I remember the day when our budget officer asked me to help lead our economic recovery from COVID. And I asked Mr. Siplon, as well as others, asked him, what was the #1 thing to work on? And that was broadband. He took that broadband task from 70% to over 90%. He's not done yet. What he's asking for is not the last mile, right? But what he's looking for is to make sure that we have the opportunity to take advantage of additional funding that may come through. And he needs that funding. Now, through our budget process at the county, there were cuts. The EDC was one of the organizations that got trimmed by over $150,000. They will not be able to do the things that they've been able to do and have the success that they've been able to have in the past if these cuts were maintained. So what I propose is that it's not significant in terms of the amount of request. It's $100,000 to address two specific issues that will work across the county. But what I would hope that this committee can do is grant these both at 100% level. They've been successful. They have a track record of being able to get things done. And if there were questions about some of the other money that we may have given to other recipients, this one I'm most comfortable with in terms of understanding, and my assurance, not my assurance, but my gut feeling tells me that this organization is going to be able to deliver on that, where some other beneficiaries may not be able to deliver the same value for the same amount of money. So hopefully this committee will consider that and move forward with funding this at a full 100%. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Further discussion on these applications? Yes, Supervisor Beatty.
I know the county gives 360,000 to the EDC and the LDC on a yearly basis. So I would hope that some of that money that the county graciously gives the EDC could be used for this. I mean, giving some money from the ARPA funds, I'm for that. I'm not for full funding it because there's a number of applications and so forth which have to be put under consideration. But I'm for the partial funding of it, and hopefully the EDC can use the 360,000 the county gives them every year as to offset the shortfall.
Are there any further comments? Mr. Gaddy, before I go back around. Yep.
Yeah, just on the broadband. I think in the housing, I think when we initially saw the applications, they're a little bit vague on some of the details of what the measurable results would be. But I mean, I think if you're going to do broadband and earmark some of that requested money for professional grant writing in order to take advantage of some of those federal funds, I think that would be money well spent, because I think you have identified there's a lot of different sources out there, and it does take a bit of time and energy and expertise to navigate that. So if you can bring outside resources to that, we might be able to leverage that money very effectively. And then with the housing, I would only ask if the EDC coordinate closely with the planning department on that one, because if we have our housing study that's going to be hopefully approved and finalized late spring this year, and then additionally we have a comprehensive plan that's going to be underway early winter, spring. There's going to be a lot of discussion about housing, and there'll be a lot of opportunity to make sure that we're rowing in the same direction on that one. And obviously, housing study is not a silver bullet. $50,000 is not going to be a silver bullet. Housing is going to be an issue that we have to grapple with for a long time going forward in ways that we're not used to as local governments. We haven't really gotten to the housing market before, so it's sort of new territory for us. So we do need to allocate resources to it. We just need to make sure we're doing it effectively. So I think it's just making sure that we're really specific about the outcomes that we're going to get from this funding.
Other discussion? Supervisor Thomas?
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Wild. I think that we should fully fund EDC for broadband and for the housing. I think, that they work for the county basically. And I think it's basically investing money into two issues that we've been grappling with for years. And I think that we have this opportunity to invest this money, and I think it would be a wise use of the money.
Anyone else?
Madam-
I'll go back. Supervisor Wild.
Madam Chair, thank you very much again. A couple of comments and requests. First off, on full disclosure, I have recently joined the EDC board, so I'm a member of the board. There was a discussion today about the board meeting with the county's reduction in funding. The board is composed and comprised of what I would say is a significant amount of business leaders in our community, and they were surprised at what the county had done because they recognize the value of what the EDC has been able to do for our community. So, the other thing that I'd like to talk about is the categorization of the EDC requests being nonprofit. It also has another portion of that to address the negative economic impacts. This is purely a huge need that we found as a result of COVID, housing and broadband. And I think we should consider this as being a multifunctional piece in terms of what it delivers from the ARPA request. And thirdly, my request is, I know that there's comments about EDC's budget and where they spend their money. Without objection, maybe Mr. Sipline could provide some more details. I don't have those details in front of me for the meeting this morning because I didn't bring those papers with me. But without objection,
I just don't want to get too sidelined on EDC's operations versus the applications that we have in front of us.
well, it was all
Because
about,
specific
the question about whether or not $350,000 was adequate for them to be able to run their organization. They're actually running a deficit because of this. And, you know, if there's any questions about that, I can't answer those, but I'm sure Mr. Sipline could.
Oh, that's a good idea. Supervisor Beatty, you also had questions on this.
Well, yeah, we didn't cut the EDC for the record. We increased them $50,000 this year. They wanted 200,000. They wanted 200,000 additional dollars. They were not cut. So let's be clear on this. I just asked the budget officer and he verified that. So there wasn't a EDC cut of 150. They wanted 200 more thousand. Okay, well, I want 1 million more. So if you want to give me 900,000, I guess you cut me 100,000. Well, that's just not sound logic. So let's just be clear that there's additional dollars in the EDC budget. And we just didn't give them the full amount that they asked for. But that's the reality. That's the fact. So let's be clear on that, okay? I don't like you know, so thank you.
Madam Chair, still without objection, if we could, Mr. Sipline. respond.
I think that's fine. If you can just keep it tight, Mr. Sipwan, to the issue at hand about the budgeting and whether the applications can be funded.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'll be brief. Everything that's been said is true and it can be very, very confusing for people. The EDC for the last 2 years has spent more than the county has provided and its other municipal partners have provided. We did that because we had the fund balance to be able to do it, and it was the right thing to do at the time. We made that very public. We've disclosed that in all the county meetings that we've had. It's not sustainable. So we brought that continued funding level to the county and the budget process. We made an additional request as was delineated, and that was reduced. So while there is more money that has come to the EDC than was last year, it is now back to the level it was in 2012. And it is the same amount that has been for the last 10 years. What has not been the same is the challenge that's in front of us. And that's why right now I'm advocating as fortunately as I can, that we invest in these two areas, because I believe they're without exception, things that everyone here thinks needs investment. And so the two specific areas that we're looking at are very targeted. In the area of broadband, we specifically lay out not only the monies to potentially hire grant resources, but to continue to keep the maps updated and to do the work as an advocate for law changes and legislation that will enable us to get to greater broadband availability. And I think that's the ultimate metric. So if we can move from the 92% that we're at today to something higher, and if the number of people that are actually utilizing it in Warren County grows over that period of time, I believe that's the metric that would be most effective at gauging our success there. I think $50,000 relative to what the counties surrounding us are spending. So for instance, in Saratoga County, they just allocated $2 million to much the same set of tasks. I think we're talking about a very small, modest amount of money for a very effective end result, which is our goal, is to provide you with good, compact, efficient services. On the housing front, the application lays out that the monies will be spent in about 4 different ways. Outside data, outside speakers and services, the delivery of those in presentations throughout the community, sometimes big and sometimes small, and the travel to support those. It's designed to be a participant along with what Ethan was talking about. As you're creating the study that suggests what it is that is needed, there needs to be a process to engage the public in all of its various forums, whether it's the business public, the elected public, or the community at large, so that they have the opportunity to go deep into the data, ask whatever questions they have, challenge whatever they'd like to challenge, but hopefully be ready to receive what you're going to offer them and is going to play out in the rooms of their planning boards, in their zoning and in their town halls. Our job is to go meet them where they are and bring them information they don't have so that they can be the most effective they can possibly be at those times. The metric to gauge there is whether or not we grow housing capacity. And I think we share that with the planning department here. I think we know that we need that together. Thank you.
Madam Chair, just one last comment and I'll be brief.
Hold on. I have a new supervisor who would like to say something. Had her hand up. Yes, Supervisor Sieber.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Mr. Siplon, just a quick question regarding the mapping. It's my understanding that a few years ago, FCC wasn't doing the type of mapping with broadband availability by address level, which they're doing now. And you had initially started this hiring project and outreach to do a lot of updating on those maps. My concern is just a while back asking for just some additional information from our planning department, provided me with just some guidance that perhaps the majority of what you're asking for, and to Wayne's point, Ethan's point, asking for additional detail and having it really spelled out would be helpful, because to update the maps, it was a thought, it wouldn't be as extensive cost-wise as what's in this proposal, so that the majority of it was that outreach and community effort. My question to you is, how much are the municipalities contributing towards this effort along with the county?
Yeah, please. Otherwise, nobody can hear you.
There's about 3 questions there. I'll try to make sure I answer them all. The mapping efforts themselves are complicated. Some of the data is carrier related data, and when it is in the possession of the county is bound by the agreements that it's formed with those particular carriers. So what we try to do is maintain an independent set of data that can be utilized for the grant applications that's not limited in that way. I'm not certain whether you will need that going forward. We definitely needed that for the last grant application that we went through. It's not clear on all of the future funding efforts whether it will or will not be required. So we're reserving the opportunity to be able to do it. Secondarily, there are Go ahead.
On that issue before you move on to the next one, then when the request from the planning department came in back at the end of July for additional information for that address level data, I think it's called, that's already now been provided to the county.
So the FCC, there was a request made by the county to get what was known as the FCC data at the time.
Right.
That is designed so that they can support challenge maps that each municipality can go through to ensure that they believe that what the FCC has is correct. So that I believe that planning department just got that data after requesting it some number of months ago. At least that's what
They have it now. I mean, that was in July. It's just relevant.
I believe that Sarah says that she got it in the last week. That's what she told me. But it's not clear whether or not that's going to be able to solve all of the questions for all of the potential future grants that we may want to apply for. So I can not tell you definitively whether or not we will or will not need the resources for mapping the way we did for the last grant. But I did put funds in that would allow us to be able to utilize them if we did. If we don't, and there's a possibility that we don't, we still need to work with every single municipality to help them challenge the efforts on both the state and federal level. So if there's say, for instance, a neighborhood in Horicon, because of the former census block mapping that shows it has broadband that it doesn't, we must help that community challenge that so that they're made eligible for future funding. That is an extensive effort. It requires us to not only update the maps once, but to continually update them, and then to engage with the municipalities in an ongoing way to make sure that they're current. All we're trying to do is help here. If the planning department can do it, then, you know, that would be wonderful. But it seems to me from the work that we've done over the last 2 years that that has probably been beyond the capacity of the planning department to work on a weekly basis the way we have with each one of the municipalities. So we do have some funds in there to do that. I think your third question, I'm trying to remember.
Municipality contribution.
The municipalities that support the EDC do not do it specifically to broadband. We have municipal support from Queensbury, we have municipal support from the city of Glens Falls, and we have municipal support from the county. Not one of them specifically delineates a broadband deliverable as part of their support. Every part of the work that we have done has been what I would consider to be extra to the core mission that an EDC is typically charged with, which is why this process, I believe, is a really effective tool. If we could get the $50,000 that we've requested, it would allow us to continue to do that work over the next 2 years without having to try to include that into the charter, which would then be part of our ongoing scope. I think it's kind of a perfect use.
I appreciate the additional information. My only thought on this process is because it was requested for a little more detail regarding this. I would like a little time to go back and follow up with Sarah, and then also take into consideration the fact that, like you mentioned, the majority of municipalities don't have these deliverables. They're not contributing towards the financial end of this. And it does sound like perhaps it is something that the planning department, especially with the additional staff, and the budget looks really good for the planning department next year, perhaps can take a more active role in. So at this point in time, I'm going to abstain from the vote if you call it for today, but I do appreciate the information on it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Back to Supervisor Wild.
Supervisor, thank you. Just quickly, when COVID happened, I used to talk about a three-legged stool. The issues that we're trying to keep us afloat with. And those were workforce, childcare, and housing. Broadband was a piece of that also. So these are key elements to where we need to go in the future. But the big key point that I wanted to make, that I'm glad Mr. Siplon brought it up. We're funding this organization at 2012 levels. We went through a major budget upheaval this year because we couldn't continue to operate the government at 2021 levels for 22 and beyond. So it's kind of disingenuous to think that we can expect the same or similar results on the funding that we're giving an organization, something that we haven't increased the funding in 10 years. So that's all I have to say. I granted, if we need to look at it more, I'm fine with doing that, but I think this organization definitely deserves what they're requesting.
I'd like to ask, is there a committee member who wants to make a motion for a recommendation on a funding amount today or not?
I will, the whole amount.
Is that a
I'll make the
motion?
Yeah, for both of them.
Okay,
I'll second it.
is that a
That's
second?
fair.
Okay. Discussion on the funding. Supervisor Seaver,
I'm just asking for a roll call, please.
absolutely.
I'll-
Supervisor Beatty.
I'll support what we currently have down.
So the spreadsheet says that was based on our formula, 15,000 for housing and 15,250 for the broadband.
And I'd like to make a comment that I'm not sure what Queensbury's funding the EDC at now. I know Glens Falls is funding it less than what they used to, so.
I don't know that.
Yeah, I do. Glens Falls is funding it less than what they used to. I think about half of what they used to fund ECC. And we haven't cut. In fact, we've added, so.
Any further committee members want to make a comment, or should I call the question? We'll go from there.
Madam Chair, let's just maybe I'll have to withdraw that so we can get some more information,
Okay,
right? Instead of, having it go through this vote and not agreeing on where we want to go. I'll withdraw it until the next meeting. Let's see if I can get some more information for this committee. Because it is, I know, so I sit through conversations with Mr. Siplon and his team of what they've done this whole year. I'm not sure if anybody else has on this committee other than maybe Wayne. But I think there's value here. And if there's some more questions that I need to help address, I'll definitely do that and make sure that everyone gets some insight before the next time we meet.
I'm looking at Frank. I'm not hearing anyone objecting to this. The value of this is just the dollar funding amount. Frank, do you want to
Sure,
agree to that withdrawal? Okay, at this time?
that's what you want. Yeah, sure.
Okay,
I can agree to that.
Because we do have money left over. So it's just a matter of
do.
understanding, the benefit of this versus some others in terms of where we're going.
okay. Yeah, fair.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Looking at others, and I know we have a representative from the city of Glens Falls. One of the ones that we asked Amy, yes, I'm going to call you up here. One of the ones that we discussed at the last meeting, but we asked for some additional information. Gina, we didn't forward this to the full board, did we? The city of Glens Falls on the recreation buildings? We did. Does anybody have any questions for Amy? So you're saying we did put that one forward to the full board at the 172,500? Okay. No, no. I didn't think we had them. Let me pull up. We had some questions. I know there were also some legal concerns about infrastructure project funding through another municipality. Amy Collins, if you wouldn't mind, I know the rec committee met recently, so maybe you could give us an update on what is happening at the city. And then Larry, if you could update us on legal research. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here on behalf of Mayor Collins and the city of Glens Falls, representing the Recreation Department today. We have undertaken some court restoration projects in the city. I'm sure you've all played on our courts at Crandall Park. We've started a project at Eastfield as well. And we probably have 6 different parks that we would like to have some court rehabilitation, revitalization. Many of these courts lie in, severely distressed areas. So I think they would qualify for ARPA money. I'm just here to support your support. This is, these rec areas during the pandemic were used by many, many citizens all over the county. And, we do have some tangible data that, supports that. So I think it's an investment for our county to improve these rec areas that have not had any improvements in a very long time.
So the full request was for $250,000. Mr. Elman, I know you had some conversations. Can you give us an update?
After the last meeting, I was very fortunate to have some detailed conversations with Pat Dowd at the city of Glens Falls, who greatly assisted me in better understanding some of the HUD qualification positions for the wards, some of the wards in Glens Falls. As part of that conversation, I went back in and I've identified a different section of ARPA that this committee has not worked on before or been exposed to before. And it's provision that provides the ability to give funding based on what's called a disproportionately impacted household, population, or community. And the focus here would be the legal term of disproportionately impacted community. Clearly, based on the information that I received from Mr. Dowd, that there are 2 wards that are what's called census tracts for purposes of HUD funding, which is clearly meets the definition of what's a disproportionately impacted community or population. Additionally, through some further and more detailed analysis provided by the city of Glens Falls and looking at various housing programs to include programs in the state of New York, it does appear that the city as a whole qualifies as what would be defined under the ARPA regs as low-income households and populations, meaning that all 5 wards, when combined, would meet the criteria for a low-income population. The good news in this is it does provide this committee the ability to directly fund parks and recreation facilities in those disproportionately impacted communities, based on a finding that the funding would assist in, and I want to get the language exactly correct. That would assist those communities in addressing the negative impacts of the pandemic based on their status as disproportionately impacted communities. So the long and short and the executive summary, I guess, is that this committee should make a specific finding that the city of Glens Falls is in fact disproportionately impacted. And that then finding would permit the committee to designate ARPA funds for the purposes of parks and recreation facilities and investing in those facilities to improve health outcomes for the residents. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to field them and try to answer them.
Any questions for Mr. Alman or Ms. Collins? Yes, Supervisor Beatty.
So that's a yes, we can use the ARPA funds.
Yes, I guess.
As long as you're finding that in fact Glens Falls is a disproportionately impacted community, as I've laid out,
Right.
which it appears that it is, and that it would be appropriate to use ARPA funds to assist in improving health outcomes for the residents of that disproportionately impacted community. That opens the door to designating monies from ARPA for the purposes of parks and recreational facilities. It's a very restricted, very limited ability to use ARPA funds for parks and recreations, which is really a capital improvement. And it's not going to be available, as far as I can tell, to any other communities in Warren County.
So the other part of the question is, so is the host city classified as that, or is it just certain areas of the city? Because if it's only certain areas that fall into that designation, then parks may or may not, the parks that need some work may not fall in that area.
There's four city parks that are looking to be rejuvenated and basically capital improvements made there too. Two of them clearly fall into what's called census tracts under HUD. Okay.
Okay.
As for the other three, or all 5 wards of Glens Falls put together, when you put them together and you look at the numbers, the information I have from Glens Falls is that they do meet the definition, which is a much looser definition under ARPA, of a low income household and population. So the answer is yes, the city as a whole, when you take all of the information on the aggregate, does seem to meet that definition, which would allow the committee to designate funds that could be used not just in 2 of those parks, but all 4 of the parks that are part of the application, as I understand it from the city.
Okay,
And
yep,
I know, thank you, Madam Chairman. So can I ask Amy a question?
yes.
So Amy, is the
Supervisor.
city, has the city put any money from the ARPA money into these parks?
Yes, Mayor, the Mayor Council has designated close to $1 million of our city allotment of the,
Of ARPA funds, okay.
it's not, the monies, we've started that project with the Eastfield court rehab. So yeah, the city, I'm don't know the exact number, but you can be sure that I am influencing Mayor Collins as much as possible to support the city's ARPA money in the recreation department.
Okay.
And those areas. It is Murray Street, Sagamore, Montcalm,
Amy, do you have the ballpark?
Eastfield.
Sorry, Doug, I would interject 1 second. Do you have the ballpark of the cost for all of the parks? Haha, no pun intended.
We have, we have costs, we do, and I certainly would be able to provide that to y'all.
Okay,
I mean, we've bid,
but it's accurate that the city is planning on spending about $1 million of its ARPA
it
money.
is accurate.
And I can tell you, I've played on all 3 of those courts and they do need some work, but
No, it's been a very, very long time.
Okay, any further questions, or I'll open it up for discussion. Supervisor Wild.
I did have a question for Amy. Amy, the $1 million that's being invested, is any of that money going towards these projects? Or is this in addition and different parks that are being upgraded?
They are going towards projects, you mean, additionally, yeah, I mean, I think that the mayor has a plan to take over that rehabbing of the courts, but it would be, the money would be part of this as well. So this would be additional funds to help.
So, Amy, just out of curiosity, the city got $12 million from
That's correct.
ARPA also, which is basically equivalent to what Warren County's getting. Can you give us an insight in terms of how that money's being distributed?
You know, Supervisor Wild, I wouldn't be the person to discuss that, because I can tell you that infrastructure in our wastewater system and our pipes, you know, is $3.8 million. But as far as the delineation, you know, I would probably reserve the right to, you know, have someone else on staff discuss that with you, but I'd be happy to get that information for you.
Yeah, to the, you know, possibility that the constituents or the representatives from Glens Falls might be upset with me. I'd like to understand where the city is distributing their $12 million and how it adds with the $12 million that we're spending, because we are spending some significant money in nonprofits within the city also. So I'd just like to make sure that we're aware of how we're spending the money in conjunction with what the city's doing.
Sure, fair. I'll just mention that Mr. Dowd from the city staff did speak to this at the last meeting about what they were using the ARPA money for. I'd have to go back
It
and,
wasn't laid out, though. At least I don't have any written information in terms of what that looks
But
like.
isn't this particularly about the parks and rec? I mean, not really about the, I mean, I know that we have been given a large sum of money, but really this discussion is about our recreation areas.
It is, Amy. And, you know, not to say that that isn't worth considering. But there's other things that we need to consider also in terms of where we're going with this. And I just want to feel comfortable. of how we're
Absolutely.
Spending the money.
And the pandemic really highlighted, you know, the need for the revitalization of some of these rec areas. I think, you know, as I said before, I think many of the citizens of the entire county came to enjoy some of those rec areas in the city. And, you know, we really, we hope that we add value to, you know, what the county's doing.
is there anyone on the committee who wants to make a motion regarding this application? Or do we want to hold off and get some more information?
Madam Chair, I think we'd like to table it till we get some more information before the next meeting.
I saw another hand. I'm gonna. First.
Yeah, I was gonna make a motion that we vote on this. I'm comfortable with it.
Are you suggesting a dollar amount though, Supervisor?
So we've got down, correct me if I'm wrong, we've got down, they requested $250,000, we've got down 172,500. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
So I would make a motion that we fund 172,500. It's the second largest, obviously. It's the only city in the county. It's the second largest in population. And if you're looking for actual usage and how many people use it and so forth, it's, well, now it's not because it's in tough repair, but it needs to be repaired. So I'm fine with the 172.5.
Is there a second? Thank you. And could I ask that you amend your motion to include the finding that the city is disproportionately impacted and this will assist with improving health impacts to these communities?
I would be honored to add that language.
Okay, thank you. And Supervisor Sieber? Discussion. Supervisor Thomas?
How do we know they're disproportionately affected?
It's,
That's what I'd like to know. I mean, you know, we delay everything else for more information, so let's have some more information.
That's what Larry said.
I'll let the committee members ask them or discuss and then I'll come to you, Mr. Elman, okay?
And if I still got the floor,
Sure.
the county currently has a contract with the city for $99,000 a year for recreational facilities. And that's been in effect ever since I've been here 19 years, going on 20. Been in effect since, you know, all that time, and probably prior to that, at one time it was 150,000. So if you take 20 years and you know, 5 of them at 150 and 15 at 99, you're up $2.2 million. Not that I won't support this, but you know, just so everybody knows.
I don't know if Amy's able to speak to that particular contract and what is done with the 99,000, but if you want to speak to that, you can, Amy. I'm going to come to Mr. Lamothe because he had his hand up.
2 points. We have a statement that they're disproportionately affected. I haven't seen those numbers. And before I could vote one way or the other, I'd just like to verify those numbers. All right. The second point is if we're using HUD definitions, the city of Glens Falls is an entitlement community under the HUD program. As such, the county is not eligible to invest community development dollars or HUD dollars into the city. I don't know that that same restriction applies. And that would be a question to the attorney.
Okay. Larry?
I did not see any restrictions in the commentary from Treasury about dedicating ARPA funds to disproportionately impacted populations. And that's important, I believe, because the definition specifically does include qualified census tracts, of which 2 of the 5 wards are. And I would be more than happy to have Mr. Dowd coordinate with you as to the rather lengthy analysis that he provided me and helped me walk through. It's a result of, it appears to me that it's a result of math, not of preference or opinion. But I defer to the committee on whatever further information you may need or want to see. This application, I believe, is the only application that the county is receiving and considering that designates monies to a disproportionately impacted community. Which was in large part, when you read through the commentary from Treasury, one of the core focuses of ARPA and the who would be receiving that money would be a focus on trying to focus in on disproportionately impacted populations. And fortunately, Warren County does not have many. Although it may feel that way for some communities, and please don't misunderstand that statement. But from a mathematical standpoint of income, the city of Glens Falls is in a different category than the rest of the county, is my understanding from Mr. Dowd.
I have Ethan and then Supervisor Wild. I just want to say that I thought that was the understanding too, that it's a mathematical formula based on like census data. It's not that we're making some subjective thing to suggest subjective finding. Because of course, many of our communities are very much in need. But I'll stop there.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Wayne was mentioning, there's 2 qualified census tracts in the city of Glens Falls right now for ARPA funding. I think we should be careful about how we make the correlation between those 2 census tracts and the remainder of the city being by default disproportionately impacted. I think it would behoove us to understand how we got from those 2 tracks to the entire city, at least spelled out for our comfort levels. I think, then Wayne could back me up on this. The federal government has a pretty cut and dry rules. They rely on census numbers. I think we could pretty quickly get to the heart of it. And I'm in full support of the application. The city of Glens Falls has a disproportionate number of not-for-profit organizations, host many civic and cultural things that not in the tax rolls are in benefit to the entire region. So a modest investment in public parks that have no barrier to access is a good investment in my mind.
Supervisor Wild.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to suggest that I would like to, and maybe what I should do is just bring a motion to table this. We moved quickly on some disbursements before. It's come to my attention that we've made some mistakes. And there's no reason for us to move forward today on this until we can get some insight, specifically in terms of my request about the ARPA funding distribution that Glens Falls has planned, specifically in the high level as well as in detail in terms of the money that the $1 million they're spending on their parks. And secondarily, about what we were just talking about in terms of the census tracts and the ability to apply this. I'm not saying we take this off the table for the whole time. Let's just get some more information so we feel solid about moving forward with this. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's a motion.
Okay, that's a motion to table. That's okay. Is there a second? I'll come to you in just a second.
No second on the motion to table.
We don't necessarily need a second, but I'll take discussion. Go ahead, Supervisor Seaver.
If the purpose of tabling this is for more information, all of us have this final rule. In fact, I brought it back with me when Supervisor Bramer and I went to the conference. And on pages 18, 19, 17, 18, 19, it's very clear on what this disproportionately impacted households are. And in fact, it goes into great detail to say an income at or below 185% of the federal poverty guidelines, income at or below 40% of the area median income for its county. Counties may use a default household size of 3 for easier administration. Counties may also have a household earning below 40,626 is disproportionately impacted. It goes on and on to talk about that formula and how that's determined. And, so if the purpose for tabling is for more information to reach into our wherever everybody kept this or to look at online, it's here. I'm not comfortable with tabling it because I believe that we've been provided the information. Now, if you're looking for the formula or the numbers across the entire county on where each municipality falls within disproportionately impacted communities, that's a different discussion. And I'm sure you can get that in between now and whatever time this moves on, but I don't think this needs to be you tabled the EDC, so now you're tabling this discussion. This is totally different and the information's in front of us, so I'm opposed to a table.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion to table? Okay,
Madam Chair,
sure.
we have made mistakes in the past. We know that. Some of the things have come to us before. I'm not saying not to fund this. I'm saying let's find out more information. And I think many people on this committee are also aware of some of the mistakes we've made.
Order.
So how is that a point of order?
It's a point of order. The motion that's in front of us, before us right now is a motion to table. The discussion needs to be germane to the motion to table in front of us and not the topic of the underlying resolution. We just vote on the motion to table, please.
Your point is well taken. Do you have anything further on the motion to table?
Madam Chair, can you help me understand exactly what just happened? Because I have no idea what I did wrong.
Okay, I'm going to call the question on the motion to table.
I can't continue my discussion.
I would
Can you help me understand what I did wrong?
just to the motion to table.
It is, that's the reason for my motion to table.
Okay.
The reason the table
It
is.
seems to me like you're getting into the underlying application details.
No, I'm not getting into what I'm trying to say is that I'm not contesting the underlying details of this application. What I'm saying is there's information that's wanted, that's requested, and we've made mistakes on other applications.
Okay,
The motion is the
question on the motion to table,
Sure, okay, that's,
so we can move forward one way or another. And I'll ask for a roll call.
Okay, this is on the motion to table. Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Ms. Seaver,
No.
Ms. Gillis,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
No, I don't think. so.
Mr. Beatty,
no.
Mr. Lamont,
Yes.
Mr. Wild,
yes,
Mr. Gaddy.
Yes.
So that motion fails. We only had 5 in favor and you have to have 6.
Okay, so we're back to the discussion on the motion in front of us, which was for the 172,500. Is there any further discussion on that, knowing that there are concerns by supervisors? We get that. Okay. Amanda, can you do a roll call? I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Gills.
Can we vote on it now and then ask the planning department to shore up the information? I mean, we've done that before, so
Yeah.
vote on it now and then ask the planning department to shore up the information that to the point where they're comfortable with it. Is that
We
appropriate?
can definitely do that. And I think some of the disconnect is that Larry was speaking directly with Pat Dowd, the city, and we weren't looping in the planning department. Because all,
I don't know the numbers.
Yeah, there's.
we can certainly ask that Larry share that information with Wayne and make our planning department comfortable. And if they're not, it'll be discussed, I'm sure, at the full board meeting. Mr. Elman?
Just to clarify also, there are 2 of the 4 parks that are in HUD census tracts. So those are like 100% every day, night and day, clearly without question in the definition of disproportionately impacted population. So that's an option for the committee as well, that you would only provide funds for those two parks. But I have, yeah, whatever I can do to facilitate the process. And those two parks would be Eastfield and Montcalm Park. Those are the two parks that are in the two wards that every day of the week are in the HUD qualified census tract.
Okay, I think if we just ask you to share that information, let's get it out to the full committee, including our planning department. I'm looking at you just in case there's anything further you want to add. I don't like to cut people off. Try to get,
No, I just,
okay.
is as long as the planning department, I mean, can we change the motion to be the 172.5 for those two parks? And then maybe that takes out some of the underlying issues.
I just don't know
Ethan, I don't
if
know.
they can use 172.5 on just the two parks. Amy, could you,
There's a lot of work.
you could use 172,500 on
On Montcalm and
Eastfield
Northfield.
and Montcalm.
Absolutely.
Are you guys willing to change your motion to make it the award to those specific parks?
Yes, I made the motion, so I'm willing to amend the motion to be specific to those two parks that have categorically qualified for the funding.
Okay. I believe Ms. Seaver, you were on the second. Thank you. So it's amended that way. I will call the question on the motion as amended just now.
Roll call,
Amanda,
please.
could you please give us a roll call?
Sure. Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Ms. Seaver,
Yes.
Ms. Gillis,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty,
Yes.
Mr. Lamont,
Yes.
Mr. Wild, Mr. Gaddy.
Abstain.
Okay, so that passes.
Thank you, Amanda.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Amy, for being here.
Thank you for your consideration.
Of course. Okay, the next one that we have speakers here for is on J Labs. Jenna, if you come up to the podium, this was one that we had asked for additional information and asked Ms. Brand to provide us some more details on what her business plan is. For her proposal in the application.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jenna. Sorry if I seem nervous because I've never done this before and I'm not as experienced as the rest of you. I have a business plan that I brought with me that I just created. It's pretty large and long, but I worked super hard on it. And I do only have one copy, but I had emailed it. I'm not sure if you could send it to everybody.
We can get it out to the committee.
Okay.
I have it electronically.
Okay.
Yeah, she did email it to me this afternoon, guys.
So just a little bit about me. I'm 26. I have 2 kids at home and a fiance, and I have always been in childcare. I've been a nanny for a few years after I graduated. I worked at Prospect School in Queensbury. And I also worked during my college at ACC. I was a work study at the daycare there, which is kind of where I grew my passion for wanting to open my own daycare someday, which led me here. And when I heard about ARPA funds through Georgie at Child Care Network back in, I want to say it was May or June, I jumped on the opportunity to apply for an application, and I figured it would be good for me to see where it could take me. I think that I feel if I didn't have help with funding towards opening my own daycare, I would never be able to do it just because of the cost. Everybody knows that it's not cheap to open your own daycare center. And I guess it was an option for me to open my own home daycare center, but right now I don't own my own home. So I know that, one day I will. I'm actually in the middle of buying a house now, but I think that I have more of a passion of growing a business outside of my home, especially with having my 2 kids with me. So yeah, that is a little bit about me. And I did watch the last meeting where you had all decided that I could ask for more money if that was possible. Originally, I had requested 30 and I was going to cover the rest of the cost myself, whether it be through business loan or my fiance, who we own a pressure washing company, and he is also a lineman, so we have extra money saved. Obviously not using being able to get it funded through ARPA funds would actually be a huge help for me to be able to get on my feet and start up, you know, the first year without having to come up with those backup plans. So now I did change my request from 30 to 100,000. Came up with a budget, which I have here. And I did have help, like I said, from Southern Child Care Network coming up with this budget and changing my numbers around from the 30 to the 100,000. And also, I'm going to mention that I have been working with Lynn Wadley. She's a realtor and a accountant, and she is helping me look at locations. One main one being on Cronin Road in Queensbury, and I would rent out half of it. And it does need a little bit of work done to it, so that added to my budget as well from the 30 to the 100,000. Doesn't need a ton of work, but the owners are very motivated to get somebody in there. It's the old Social Security building on Cronin Road, and it was occupied since 1996 until 2 years ago. And so they really want to get somebody in there, and hopefully it'll be me. And that's it. If anybody has any questions.
Well, Jenna, we don't have copies of your updated budget in front of us. Could you give us some of the highlights of where the costs are changing since when we saw it before?
Let me see here. So I added a few things. I have the budget for 1 year's worth of having a daycare, so that it would cover everything for 1 year. Rent is on here. The major costs would be rent, utilities, inspections, licensing. Let's see. I also included $10,000 worth of payroll. Obviously, I can pay employees with revenue that I get, but you never know going into it, you know, owning your own business. Are you going to get 10 kids? Are you going to get 30 kids? Are you going to get 10 families and clients to come in? That's all up in the air. I would obviously hope and aim for the most amount that I can get, which I have in my business plan for ratios for children and employees. But for the funding from ARPA funds, I did include $10,000 in payroll, just in case I don't get as many clients as I plan on getting. So those are some. I also have furniture in here because, you know, you'll need cribs and rockers and desks for an office. Just a lot of different types of furniture. I have a cleaning company in here on my budget to come in and clean, toys and supplies. I have $40,000 worth of renovations. If I'll need the money to renovate the building that is on Cronin Road. I also, if I do rent that building out, it needs a playground, which it wouldn't be like a huge playground like at Queensbury. So it would be like a small infant toddler type of playground, but it does need fencing. So I included $40,000 worth, which is almost half of the budget for that. So those are some of the major costs.
How many employees are you planning on hiring at this point to start out?
I have about, I think it's 10. I have it in my, sorry, let me just see if it's written in here. Yeah, I have 10 to 12 employees. My sister being one of them who she has her master's degree. She was a teacher for 2 years, and she's been home since COVID with her children. And she actually is looking to go back to work now. So she would be the director. And then the other employees would be the teacher's aide, and I would have 3 classrooms to start. Obviously, I'd hope to grow and have more than just the 3 classrooms, but it would start with infant, toddler, preschool, and then a before and after school program as well. And then you need a teacher and a teacher's aide in each classroom, except for the infant room, you need 2 teachers and an aide for that.
Okay, I know I see hands up for questions. Okay, Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So I assume you're state licensed or whatever, right? Or you're in the process of getting that?
Yes, I'm in the process. I actually applied before I applied for the ARPA funds. And the last step was pretty much getting a location and the funding.
Okay, and how many, the location, the social security building there in Cronin, how many, would you be authorized or you plan on? How many kids are you planning on having when you're max?
So if I start with just the 3 rooms, it's going to depend on the ratios. So I have that here. Maxed would be, sorry, this is so long, so I have to just find the right page. Okay, so that would include, give me the other one. Sorry, I just want to give you the
Alright.
right
Take your
information.
time.
Okay, here it is. So that would be the infant room would include 10, and then the toddler room, 10 max. Toddler room is 15 and the preschool room is 20.
So
And that's
the,
at max capacity. And the social security building, I really was interested in because nobody is renting it right now at all. There's kind of 3 portions to it, and I liked 2 out of the 3. So if the one side that I didn't want right now stays vacant and eventually I grew, I could just keep my daycare in one big building and I could just grow it in there rather than.
so if I add up correctly, it was 10, 15, 20, so it's 35.
Yeah.
45 actually total, okay. All right, obviously, there's a huge need in Warren County for daycare. We talked about it endlessly. And I'm glad that she worked with the Southern Conference or what's
Southern Adirondack
Southern.
Child Care Network.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
Ms. Sickles is here too, if we have any questions on that. And I'm sorry, I forgot your colleague's name already. Georgie, who was very gracious at time to Jenna working on, understanding the full process and helping her with her budget and things like that. But obviously they're not here to advocate for her.
Right.
In particular, but if we have any questions about childcare in general or the need in the community, particularly with respect to centers, because at one point we had talked about, do we want to allocate additional funding to centers or Southern Adirondack Child Care Network for working specifically on opening new centers other than what we have in front of us today? That's not an application that they have brought to us. And I think they have some concerns about their own ability, scope to be moving that forward. But I asked them to come in case there were any questions, since we were going to have this discussion. Supervisor Wild?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for going through the effort of building the business plan. And I know you had some help, because I heard about that earlier this afternoon.
Yeah.
But when you look at the business plan, and you've done this, what kind of risk do you see in your business plan that you might have to plan for and address? And did you address it in your business plan?
I did not address that in my business plan. I do think it's a huge risk to open any business. But I think that when it comes to childcare, it's definitely worth a risk because after COVID, people are going back to work and families need help. And I'm a mom myself, and I learned the hard way that childcare and affordable childcare is not something that is here anymore. And I think that part of my reasoning for getting the funds would be to try and find quality employees to come work for me, because there's none of that anymore either. And getting funding for this also would help. For example, a few months ago actually applied to Prospect School to try and go back as a teacher's aide, just because I wanted to feel more fulfilled than just being home with my kids all the time. And they said that they could pay me $12 an hour. And I said, that's not reasonable for me. I wouldn't be able to survive off of $12 an hour and can get nothing with that. So part of the funding would be able to go towards employees, sign-on bonuses, getting quality people to come work for me, and being able to pay them a little bit more than what daycares around here pay their employees, because it's next to nothing anywhere, and not just Warren County, but all over. So
So just to follow on,
Yeah, and I have a question then maybe Lynn can answer about centers
Yeah.
in Warren County, how many we have and such.
there is a risk associated with starting a new business, but
Yes.
one of the things that I think you have here around you is some people that can help you.
yes,
And how strong do you feel your network is? And maybe it's, Lynn and
yeah,
but if the network is strong, and that's the ones that are gonna help you deal with the challenge.
yeah. I actually, this is my first time actually doing anything business related. I think if I'm confident in one thing, it would be my networking. I grew up in Queensbury. I nannied here. I live in Ballston Spa now just because my fiance is from there, but we're moving to Saratoga. But growing up here, I have a huge network, with people I worked with. I have 4 sisters who grew up here. We all have kids. My sister was a nanny as well. And I know a lot of people. I know that I can bring in clients. I know that people trust me and can rely on me. And so I think that if there's anything, it's my networking that would help me be successful rather than fail.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you. I'm really glad that you came back in with a business plan. I know my colleague over from Lake George had talked about when she works with startup businesses, wanting to see that business plan. I do see it in my email, and I wish you all the success. And we talked about daycares and centers, and I understand the intention was never to make the Southern Adirondack Child Care Network into a ARPA distributing grant. Just don't worry.
Okay, great.
Okay, it was, can we help in the same way that we did for the at-home for licensing? And so if that came across some other way, it wasn't intended to. But in the circumstances where we do see these startups in such a need, I think we should do everything we can to support it. And I know I'd be in full support of it.
Is there any further discussion or do we want to put a motion on the table by any committee member?
I'll bring the motion, but I'm not sure what the value is yet. Can I have one more question?
Sure.
And maybe it's for Lynn or the 2 ladies here. Is 100,000 gonna be enough to make this happen?
I believe it is. I believe that when I thought 30, I was stupid for thinking that. If that's okay to say, I think that 100,000 would definitely cover, especially location is everything. If you're building something from the ground up, it's going to cost more than 100,000. The location that I chose is huge on the price point. I think definitely it's going to cost more than $30,000. But in my budget, I did include $40,000 worth of renovation. And so I think $100,000 is right at my pinpoint. And I see now why, after doing my business plan and my budget and doing my revenue to my net income costs and all of that. I think 100,000 is right on point.
Lynn, would you mind, Lynn,
I
can you
don't
comment on that, please?
I think she's really worked hard on putting a sound plan together for the size of the center that she's considering. 100,000 should get her open. And if it is, if children are enrolled, then she's on her way. That's always the challenge. Do children get enrolled? But again, she's looked at it from a very sound business plan. So 100,000, if you can put 100,000 towards opening a program that's got 40, 45 children in it, then I think that's a good start. It's, that's all it is a start, but it is a start.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I will make that motion for $100,000 if we have the money in the budget.
Okay, that's a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that
Okay, Supervisor Beatty.
discussion.
Sure, absolutely.
So, I don't have the plan in front of me. So how many square feet, what's your price per square foot? Is it triple net? I mean, those are things I'm used to.
Yeah.
To determining whether something viable
So
on-
that's actually in my rent budget. I'm looking at right around 2,000 square feet. It would probably be about $2,500 a month just for rent. Which is in my budget plan for that. It was about Lynn Wadley, she is the realtor and also the accountant who's been helping me. She said that it's probably right around $8 to $10 a square foot.
It's a little over 10. Okay,
She said per year, though. She did say per year. So it would come out to
well,
be,
yeah, would it be a 5-year lease with a 5-year option or?
that's depends on the funding that I had, because I was gonna use it towards rent for the first year.
So it's 2,500 a month
Mhm.
rent.
Yeah.
Times 12 months, obviously. So where you're looking at 50-something thousand there, 60,000, 54,000.
Yeah. Yep, I had 30,000 written for the year.
It's 30.
20, 30. So you had 30,000 rent. Okay. So that out of that 100,000, the 30,000 would go to that.
Right.
30,000. Okay. Yeah, I mean, hey, we need it. You know, I know it's a flyer, but I'm for it.
I also just want to add to that, Georgie made a good point when she was helping me that not only, do they say like, okay, we're helping you open a daycare, like you're good now, you're on your own. They're always there like for support, for trainings and certifications and anything that I need help with after I'm open to. So I not only have their support to start it, but as I continue to grow my business and just knowing that they're there for my help and to support me is reassuring for sure. To be successful.
I saw Ms. Gillis.
You mentioned that you were planning on going to get financing before you increase the budget. Did you go into a process for financing at all?
I did not, no.
Would you be comfortable with going for financing if in a few months you were like, oh, I don't have enough money?
I think so. Just the money to be able to get me established would make me feel more comfortable. Just because I know that I have something to start me. I think my own to start me off, like just the risk that he said of failing would be detrimental to my life, I guess, and my babies at home who I have to care for and pay for.
Anything further? Mr. Lamont.
Just one quick question. Where in this process will you get your permit or license to have a daycare? I mean, is that going to be like upfront or?
I have 30 days left. I got an email yesterday on my license for the daycare center. So I had that application filled out. My last step was to get information about the location. So once I get the funding and can put work into the location, then I can finish that application to be approved.
So you have some sort of pre-approval? Yeah, maybe. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Georgie Wethington. I'm the Provider Services Coordinator at Southern Iron Child Care Network. To discuss a little bit about the licensing process, although she does have 30 days currently for the current license that she's applying for, after she has the initial application, which she does have other than the location, as she spoke about, it takes after you submit your application to New York State, they have 90 days to approve or deny her. Usually when there are concerns about the program, we work with the program as well as OCFS works with the program. It's not just like, oh, nope, you can't do this. So there is a limited time that currently for that 30 days. However, a license after submitting it, which she already has all the information other than location, it'll take a maximum of 90 days on OCFS's part.
Supervisor Wild.
Thank you. So this has been done multiple times with you. So this one's just gonna slip right through the process and not have any problem, right?
So the application was all Jenna. That is all on her. We support providers and we support daycare centers. And we definitely, as much as we possibly can, work with the Office of Family and Child Services to push that information and that process as much as possible. within our power.
So it's non-committal, but yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We only control.
OCF. Yeah. So any further questions or comments? I'll call the question on the motion we have in front of us for the 100,000 funding. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions, that carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
But-
I think we are all very excited for you, and I do hope that you will reach out to some of the other resources available to you for some of that lending support that Ms. Gillis spoke about. And your networking, come to us, and then you will also have to work with the county attorney's office on a final contract. It will have some caveats in it, I'm sure, as well as the planning department's process for reporting later. Okay, so we'll be in contact.
You're welcome.
Before we let Lynn and her colleague go, Georgie, do we have any questions for them? Is there any discussion about trying to support this on a broader level? Supervisor Seaver.
Yes, thank you. I brought up last time in context of your application, to see if there was a need for the same type of support that we did for at-home centers, for daycare centers themselves. And if in fact there was, and we shouldn't lead you to believe that it's like all a done deal. We still go through a whole nother board meeting with 20 supervisors, and hopefully we're able to support the question that took place today. But at one of those board meetings, there was some change to language, the language in our initial resolution, which excluded centers and only allowed at-home daycares. So the question came back to us, is something like that helpful for your organization in terms of funding grant award that would allow you to assist with certifications and licensings for daycares in the same way that you can for home daycare?
And I know you were clear about this earlier, but I just want to be very clear for the record that it's not to have you guys distribute funding like we've done with another board. It would be funding to make sure that you have resources to assist childcare centers with some of the things that you are already doing, really.
I appreciate that thought. It's hard to look at you and say, we really don't need that funding. But the truth of the matter is our state contract for the services we provide does include us working with center programs to do just what we've done with Jenna and help them fill out an application, help them work on a business plan. That's what we do anyway. So as much as I would love to say, yes, please give us more money, because we can all use more money, I also recognize you have many, many proposals on the table, and I don't want to be greedy. You've already been very generous with our organization. And, the difference in that proposal is that we're providing startup funds for family and group, which again, to provide startup funds, as I have said so many times, to centers would be astronomical. We just saw you're providing $100,000 to open a center. With the family childcare, we're looking at $2,500 per program. So it was a whole different proposal. So thank you for the consideration. We would love it, but we're going to do what we're going to do anyway. And you can put your money into a much more needed spot. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that explanation. And certainly, I'm so glad we're able to connect people. I think if nothing else, this entire process has talked about linking community resources and saving this taxpayer money. So it does sound like there's lots of good investment of those dollars coming in from the state. And we're grateful for that. And we hope that there's more towards your organization.
Yes. So please continue to refer people to us, even if it has nothing to do with this committee. This is what we do. It's part of what we do. So, and we're thrilled to have been able to help Jen and, in our work with her. She wrote the proposal, but I'll take a little credit on Georgie's behalf that our work with her certainly helped move her in this direction. And this is what we want to be able to do. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you for your work. And to reiterate what Supervisor Seaver said, we still have to get approval from the full board before we can formally move forward with your application, Jenna. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yeah.
are there any questions or concerns from the planning department or the attorney's office related to this $100,000 expenditure? Let's see, no, let's see.
I will,
Wayne? Or.
Just, you know, one of the things that comes up, and one of the issues with having the committee.
Right.
Process, and it's not really related to you at all. It's more procedural, so. But it's just in terms of this deliberative process, I think the committee structure can be a little bit complicated at times, because oftentimes as a committee, we'll resolve to make a motion on something and it goes as soon as possible to the full board. So as we gain more information between the committee approval for something, then the resolution going in front of the full board, you know, it doesn't leave us too much wiggle room to fully understand what we're approving. So sometimes it helps to have a little more information in advance of having this committee resolve to support something.
So you're gonna look at the business plan and see if there's any issues and. let me
No,
know.
I'm not qualified to understand business plan.
So is there a problem with the process for this? Sorry, but I just wanted.
Yeah, I just want to make everyone aware that it will take a little bit of maneuvering in terms of understanding, you know, legally how this works, administratively how this works, how it relates to the US Treasury rule. So there'll be a bit of homework that we need to do in order to make sure that we fully understand what, you know, what the requirements are. That's all.
and I appreciate that it's a new business, so we did ask her to come back with a business plan, but many of these others, we did not do that. We didn't go through those hoops, so. I think we're doing
Yeah, I know.
a fair job of our due diligence and the best that we can.
If there's an issue, or we think there might be an issue, or there's something we need to look at, we can set the right expectation to the group that was here presenting to us today. We don't think there's anything, or if there might be something that we need to address.
I haven't had an opportunity to look at the business plan, so I
Okay. All right.
So, thank you, guys. Moving on in our agenda, we do have some, I guess the treasurer has already left. Oh, good, you're here. On the small business awards at the last full board meeting, that was tabled to the next full board meeting. So it was not tabled back to this committee. I do not intend on us having any further discussions. I will report to the committee that there has been some discussion among the planning board, the planning department and our county attorney and the county treasurer about ensuring that we have things in place for the reporting after we get the awards and the money starts rolling out the door, and also some, I guess, pre-approval processes for these applications. If there are concerns, they're going to go to the full board. Our committee has already referred them there, and I do not intend on having a second debate here today. So that's that. The next item is the update on EMS agencies. I know there is debate about how we're handling this. I just want to provide the report that some of the agencies have submitted ARPA applications. I know Gina has emailed them to me, but I know no one has had an opportunity to look at them or attempt to score them, which is what I would ask that the committee members do, similar to what we've already done. And if there is an appetite for saying we're going to close those additional applications at some point in the future, I would like to do that as well. Supervisor Seaver, any discussion on this item about EMS agencies?
With all due respect, Chairwoman, I don't know why you're gonna put another deadline out there just to have it extended. So, yeah. I'm not for, at this point, closing anything as far as I'm concerned, they're closed, but if you want us to score them, are they uploaded already into the scoring document that we used previously so that we could go in and evaluate them, and how much time are you giving us to look at all of them and weigh them? And is that the appetite of this committee to score new applications after the deadline?
Well, I'm looking at the committee members. As far as I understand, the applicants did put the information into the system that Sarah Frankenfeld had created for us, correct? That they should be all there available to look in the dashboard. If we do not want to score them, obviously I think that's a committee choice. These are things that came in after our original deadline. If the committee doesn't want to review them at all, we could do that too.
I just wanted to mention, I know that there's been a lot of emphasis on the applications, but I do think that we should have some flexibility as a committee in terms of evaluating these requests from the community or identified need for the EMS services. I just don't want to get too tied to the application process. I mean, it's useful for soliciting project ideas from outside organizations, but if there's something that's been identified, by the county and our communities as a serious need, I think we do need to have some flexibility as we evaluate it.
I agree with you there, and we did refer it to the EMS committee to try to look at it from a broader perspective. The EMS committee chair has declined to meet on that and come up with a county-wide solution for distributing funds, so I think it still lies in our lap to distribute ARPA funds if or not. And so as far as the applications go, I agree with you. We don't necessarily need to be super tied to the application. However, I know that the county attorney is going to want to be able to have a process that documents what they're asking for and what money we're distributing it for. And I know the treasurer will want that too.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that one in terms of having a standardization of the ask. I think that's important. I do think that was requested by the treasurer and the lawyer as well.
Well, as far as standardization of the asks, so far the asks have been from $5,000 to ranging to $75,000 for a variety of things like reimbursement of COVID costs such as masks to assistance with funding for a new ambulance in the city. So I guess I'm just going to leave that one on the agenda for now. And I realize that there are some disagreement among the committee members, knowing also that people haven't had a chance to look at what's come in.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you. It was a slight decline from the EMS to the ARPA, thinking that it's best decided by this committee since you have the full scope of work to be done. And perhaps there's a suggestion to put a not a timeline, a dollar amount for the committee to look at for the EMS.
Does the committee want to just stew on that for a little bit, and I'm going to leave it on the agenda? Yes, Wayne.
I think I would like a chance to look at those applications and maybe, it all fits into a neat little sum like we did with the Community Services Board. Maybe it doesn't. I can't say right now how to pursue that. I know there was discussion at the county board level about how come certain EMS and not others. Well, they didn't apply, but it was, I suggested, I think at the full board meeting that there was a reach out to the other EMS providers to see if there was a need that was not addressed. I think that's what this process did, but I think we need to take a look at what's there and look at its merits and say, this was a good idea, or, it's not really meeting the needs of the program. So.
Okay. Yes.
Are there more coming in, or what was sent to us today is it? Or do we not know the answer?
I believe that, so North Queensbury, Town of Lake George and Glens Falls submitted something and Bolton, and I believe that Lake Luzerne is intending to as well. Yes.
Did you go back to the ones in Queensbury that had applied for specific training that would have, complemented the entire county and some other requests? I thought you were also going to go back to all of them and say, now we're opening up this opportunity to talk about what your needs are. I don't think they should be penalized because they applied early. They might have other needs now, recognizing that there's going to be consideration to all EMS.
I did not go out to the ones who had already applied, except for I have to caveat that with Queensbury, because I think they had one that they applied for and one they didn't with the same contact person.
I just think to be consistent and fair and equitable, it would be good to hit all of them.
I can do that if the committee wants me to put it out to the others and see if they have other asks. Yeah.
I will be attending an EMS advisory board meeting tonight at 7 o'clock.
Oh,
Is there anything I could take to them?
Sure. Yeah. Ask them if they want, if they have any specific countywide proposal they want to make, I guess.
Well, maybe let them know we have a never ending flowing deadline and perhaps they have needs that you want to apply for ARPA funds for.
There's a link. The link is reopened. If any of the agencies want to submit, the link is active again.
To put some structure to the ask, it might be advisable to maybe set aside an amount of money so we know what we're working with. And then we can have in terms of, instead of having a never ending period of asking, right? We have a set block of money, we evaluate the needs, and then we distribute it proportionally.
I don't know that we can do that rationally without having looked at what people are asking for yet.
And that's fine. I just, it's an approach to consider versus.
Yeah, yeah. I will, in full disclosure, ask them to keep their requests under 25,000. It was kind of arbitrary, but
Did you do that to everyone?
yes, I did.
Well, I just, with all due respect, it is a committee. I do think it needs to be a committee decision and not solely driven by one particular person, whether they're chair or co-chair. But I do think that, we have this deadline, we keep, I'm talking about the deadline to the date, not necessarily the dollar amount, but we also were very specific in going back and applying the formula to asks and, consistent practices here should be front and center in our minds. And I think we're opening a door that while I think we should do everything we can to support our EMS, I think there's also other ways to leverage different funding in the county to be able to assist them. And I look forward to hearing what those that feedback is at the EMS advisory board meeting. I found those helpful in the past. And I hope there's a way that we maybe collectively they could come together and say this would help all of us. I don't know. But to your point, Nathan, I just don't think until we see what they're asking or what they come up with collectively, what that dollar figure might be.
Yeah, and that's fine. I think that I agree that it would be of great use to talk to someone that's in the business of EMS and has a regional perspective on it to sort of understand the body of need. I mean,
Right.
I don't know, I can look at a handful of applications, but it doesn't mean I have a full grip on what the needs are of the EMS districts in the county.
so if you can bring that up tonight, Craig.
Okay.
Okay. And it certainly will need to come back to the committee. Okay. I do, just as an update, we still have some other outstanding applications. One of them came in today, a revised application from Tri-County United Way. So they did meet the deadline and they had asked for 400,000 as a lump sum, but they've amended that now down to 60,000. I'm not exactly sure what the details are, but I would ask you to look at that and that we would reconsider that one, as well as the one that we've talked about before, the Salvation Army. We don't know what's happening with the Meals on Wheels proposal. But we still have ARPA money. So that's where we are with that. Is there any privilege of the floor or further public comment? Yes, Supervisor Seaver.
I just have a question at the appropriate time and I may have to leave. So if you just want to email it, but just would it be helpful to say to us, that the next meeting, these are the specific ones that we're looking at, be prepared to have scored. If you haven't, if you have to, so that those organizations know that that's going to be on the agenda. And I feel like we keep telling the ones that are hanging out there, next meeting, and we don't get to them.
That's fair. I'll try to narrow that down. I don't want to make that decision, though. I'm not going to cut out there. These are the ones that are left.
Right. I just mean what we're talking about
Okay.
next meeting.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah. Just so if they want to be here, they can, and we're down to the, but like I said, I just feel bad that every time I'm like, oh, the next meeting, we're talking about whatever.
Is there one that you feel that we need to address today?
I'd like to address them all, but it's not going to happen this afternoon.
Yeah. And obviously EDC is still sitting out there too. Okay, I'll do a better job making sure I manage that process and get it on items on the agenda.
I just wonder when we're gonna talk about the community service board, because I know more money was asked for than was allocated, right? And we kind of pushed those mental health ones off and we haven't talked about them at all, and I'd really like to.
And the hospital project.
And the hospital project. I mean,
Okay.
it's.
Wayne?
Yeah, I was, my point was I was gonna circle back to that agenda item. I have
Really?
3 resolutions here from Rob York. Community Services Board has met. They've recommended $245,531 to the Warren Washington Association for Mental Health. And I have that resolution request form I will give to you. They have also made a recommendation of $167,137 to Behavioral Health Services in Warren County to People USA. One of the applicants that they had under their review. Rob gave me a number. Actually, I didn't write it down. They still have about $258,000 left. And they have, I believe, 3 applications, one of which is the hospital. They also have a resolution request form to transfer money into the appropriate codes per Rob Lynch. They've talked about it. So I'll give you those resolution and request forms before we leave.
Okay, so is this committee referring all those to finance?
No, they refer them directly to finance. I'm just kind of updating this committee as to where they stand.
Do you know how much is remaining in the outstanding requests that they are considering?
No, I know the hospital, what, 2.4 million. I don't know the others. I believe that they are, they're mulling the idea of not fully funding the other two besides the hospital. I mean, obviously they can't fully fund the hospital, but they are still looking at those three and working with them. But I'm not going to put any more words in Rob York's mouth. That was my last discussion.
Okay. I plan on leaving this on the agenda too. Yes.
Could we please ask Rob York to come to the next meeting?
Yeah.
I think that the information you just provided is really helpful, Wayne, but I can't even remotely begin to repeat anything that you just said.
I can't either.
And I would love to see it. I think we all agreed that mental health services was our top priority. And while they report through another committee, I think it's crucial to hear an update on how that's going with such a large amount of money. And I know we all committed to being able to allocate additional funds to mental health if it was needed. And without getting those updates, we're getting very late in a year and not being able to help in the way that we all envisioned. So I think it should be a priority to have a full discussion on what's going on to help mental health needs. And then also what's still outstanding, to Beth's point.
Mhm.
One thing, if we're still talking, are we off the?
Yeah.
Regarding referrals to other committees, I know we had Kevin Hajos and the Zero Waste Initiative had put forward the recycling facility. 1 million something dollars, and we had referred that back to the Public Works Committee. I did speak to I spoke to Kevin Hajos, and I just wanted to make sure that when he's getting his referrals into other committees, that it's very clear on what the intent, and what we're asking of them, so that they don't just get, this has been referred to you. So to clarify what the ARPA committee is looking for that committee to discuss, is it, and this is regarding this centralized recycling processing facility, are we looking for a more detailed business plan? Are we looking for specific endorsement from the Public Works and DPW committee? What are we trying to get out of the Public Works Committee in order for the ARPA committee to make an informed decision about the centralized recycling facility? And I just want to make, I think we have a general idea of what we want in terms of, has the committee vetted it, and what do they think? What are their questions, concerns? But I would like to just make that clear. So when Kevin does bring it to his committee, he knows exactly what we're asking for. If anyone wants to weigh in on that.
I can, if I recall correctly, we were hesitant to make any decisions when this is going to be a county facility, and we didn't know if the county was even supporting it, meaning the board. So I think there needs to be a process where it goes through the Public Works Committee and they decide whether or not they want to move forward with such a facility. If my colleague from Stony Creek were here, he would say, we've already done recycling facility. We're not, why would we do it again?
Okay, so we want to just basically get endorsement from that committee that the idea as presented by Kevin to this committee and whatever details they provide is sufficient for them to move forward. And then we would, after that is brought back to us in that committee, be able to deliberate it again.
I think it would also be nice to know if that committee is going to recommend that the county is putting money towards it, aside from the ARPA money.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure that Kevin knows what he's doing.
Okay.
We're asking for it today.
And I know planning is following up on some of these other referrals, so we just ask that you guys keep doing that. Is helpful, and let us know what happens. Gene, I'm looking at you too. Anything further? I think I'm losing my quorum.
Motion to adjourn.
Well, let me just make sure. Do you want to say anything, Jim? Again? Okay. Next meeting, we set that. It's usually helpful to do it together. I know we have a board meeting this Friday, and then when's our next board meeting, Amanda? December something or other?
December 16th.
Do you guys want to look at the week of December 5th? Tuesday again?
December 7th, 8th, and 9th, I'll be out.
Okay, how about the 6th? Tuesday afternoon at 3? Yeah, okay. Great. Number 6, and I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye, opposed, that carries. Thank you. We're adjourned.